Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome back to the Pokémon Film Perspectives, and today we're going to be discussing the fourth animated film to be released as part of the Pokémon film franchise, Pokémon Forever, aka Celebi, the voice of the forest. And as I stated last week, I don't like this movie. And this isn't, again, like last week, this isn't a subjective versus objective opinion here, no, I think this movie is kind of dumb. But before I get to my reasoning why it's dumb, I gotta go over the basic stuff we do for these videos, i.e. history with the movie, what it's about, blah 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 blah. So, what was my history with this movie prior to seeing it? Ads. That's all it was, just ads. Yeah, at this point I wasn't really keeping up with the Pokemon movies, partially because of my bias towards other Pokemon movies that didn't feature Mewtwo, but partially because I just didn't have the time. As much as I would have loved to watch other Pokemon movies, I just didn't. I saw ads for this movie here and there. I remember a few lines here and there, a few things that were advertised and popped up every now and then, but if you asked me if I had seen this movie at all, I'd be able to just tell you, no, I have not. I had not seen this movie for the longest time, and if I did catch it, it was usually just like a snippet here and there, a bit of the beginning, a bit of the ending, blah, 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 blah. I never actually sat down and watched it all the way through. Not until I actually owned a copy of this movie on DVD. Specifically, the version collected on this, the Pokémon Collector Set, which features the next 4 Pokémon movies which we'll be talking about, which of course includes this one. As such, I didn't really have much of an opportunity to form an opinion on this movie until, like I said, till I owned it. However, I did see a review of this movie once, and the review wasn't kind per se. It was like, to give context, it involved 3 reviewers. Odds are, if you're a fan of that guy with the glasses, you probably did see it floating around there at some point. But I do remember seeing that, and the general consensus was that it wasn't a good movie. Although one of the reviewers, Jesu Otaku, did openly admit that they liked it But again, watching other people talk about a film is much different than actually watching it yourself. This was still a film I wanted to see, and since I had decided to start actively collecting Pokemon movies, of course, eventually this film would be added to my roster. So, yeah, I did. When I wound up getting that particular DVD set, I did end up watching the movie, and like I said, didn't like it. But why don't I like it? What is it about this movie that makes me just not like it? After all, I called the first 2 Pokemon movies stupid, and yet I can still happily say that I enjoyed those movies. So what's the difference between those movies and this one? Is it nostalgic bias? Maybe, but again, as I stated, I don't have much nostalgic bias for The Power of One since I actively avoided that movie as a kid. So maybe there's something else about this movie that keeps me away from it. But if we really want to get to that, we need to actually get to our long-ass plot summary. So here we go. And of course, just like with the other Pokemon movies, we have ourselves a prologue that's here to basically set up the situation for the movie. As we open up on a rather impressive-looking CGI forest, as we see what looks like a Pokemon flying through the forest. And this Pokemon is called Celebi, a legendary Pokemon that's supposedly the voice of the forest, the guardian of the forest specifically, who has, according to legend, these mystical time-traveling powers that allow Celebi to just go anywhere and anywhen that they want, as long as they're within the forest. I think they can go outside the forest, but don't quote me on that. Point is, they're magic, son, and they protect the forest, and apparently they're now being hunted, as we see Celebi being chased by a Houndoom and a Scyther, who are being controlled by a Pokemon hunter who has a metal eye patch. And that's kind of awesome. And why does this guy want to catch Celebi? He's a Pokemon hunter. He wants to sell Celebi to the highest bidder, so all bets are off. As such, Celebi, of course, is doing his best to try and avoid this hunter's Pokemon, but this guy is relentless and is not stopping for a second. However, the forest is not empty. As while this is going on, a young boy, who we later learn is named Sam, is entering the forest to just begin his own Pokemon journey, as he's a Pokemon trainer. However, before he enters the forest, he's stopped by a woman in robes who warns him about the voice of the forest, telling him that if he's not careful, the voice will take him away. And while Sam promises to be careful, asshole, the woman to try and at least help Sam out ends up offering him a loaf of bread made from some of the berries and so forth that are around the forest. Sam happily accepts it and thus goes further in. However, we see that Sam is a rather interesting Pokemon trainer, sort of, as we see that he likes to sketch, as he has a sketchbook where he likes to make new sketches of Pokemon that he meets. However, as he's sketching out a few Pokemon that he comes across, he hears the commotion with Celebi and runs to investigate, and he finds Celebi being ganged up on by Houndoom and Scyther. Of course, he immediately comes in and tells them, "Hey, lay off the guy, that's just mean." And this distracts the two Pokemon enough for Celebi to kind of launch an attack, as Celebi brings to life the vines in the area and they end up restraining the Pokemon. As such, Celebi goes right to Sam, but before Sam can make a run for it, the Pokemon Hunter comes in and pretty much tells Sam hand Celebi over. Sam relatively gives the rough equivalent of "fuck you" and makes a run for it with this guy right on his tail, but eventually the chase leads Sam and Celebi to an altar, and, well, Celebi's kind of running out of options. He's already sporting a few injuries from being chased by the hunter's Pokemon, and they don't have a lot of other places to go. And so Celebi begins activating its time travel abilities as it emits this strange energy that begins radiating across the forest. And, well, Celebi and Sam end up vanishing, leaving behind nothing but Sam's sketchbook. So, yeah, where did they go? Well, we'll find out in a little bit. But as for that Pokemon hunter, well, he basically went home with nothing. But stories of what he did spread, as we actually fast forward 40 years and we see the same Pokemon hunter, and he still has the metal eye patch, but we see him being interrogated by the actual villain of this movie, a man in a strange vest and a metal mask, and who's clearly wearing a Team Rocket uniform underneath, who demands that the hunter tell him where the hell he saw Celebi. Of course, the hunter may be older, he still doesn't want to give up his quarry, and so he pretty much just tells this man in the Iron Mask to fuck off. So this guy, who I'm just going to say his name right now, he's called the Iron Mask Marauder, says that he has ways of making him talk, as he drags the hunter outside, and we see that the hunter has, cages full of Pokemon, so, yeah, an asshole. But to try and demonstrate his power, he has... Basically, the Marauder has one of his Pokemon, a Sneevil, I think it's pronounced, and breaking out a large Pokemon, a Tyranitar, and that's when the Marauder goes to his vest. And the thing is, on his vest are these dots located on each side, and inside each dot are things that look like Pokeballs. And I only call them Pokeballs because of how they function, as like regular Pokeballs, they start out marble size, and then you hit a button and they grow to larger size. But in this case, these Pokeballs are all black and look more like actual capsules. And that's because, well, they're the Marauder's own personal Pokeballs that he calls Dark Balls. In function, they work pretty similarly to a Pokeball. You throw it at a Pokemon, they get caught in it, and so now they're yours, and you can let them out to do your bidding. However, where they differ from regular Pokeballs is that once a Pokemon is captured in a Dark Ball, the Dark Ball not only increases the Pokemon's power to its maximum, but it also makes the Pokemon evil! Okay. But, well, the Marauder does demonstrate his power as he captures the Tyranitar in one of his Dark Balls, and once he releases the Tyranitar, its disposition is suddenly a lot different, as it looks stronger, meaner, and just kind of ruder, as the Marauder orders the Tyranitar to just go Hyper Beam on this hunter's property, pretty much destroying everything. As such, the hunter, realizing that his entire livestock is at risk here, finally comes clean and tells the Marauder exactly where he wants to look. And so, from there, well, goes the route any Pokemon movie does. We check in with Ash and Co. as we see them at a little boat, as we see them by a riverside town, as Brock and Misty are getting ready to board a ferry. Or, well, more specifically, they're waiting for Ash so they can board the ferry. And unfortunately, Ash is running a little late. Well, it turns out that the reason for this is because, well, Ash was challenged by a Pokemon trainer living in this place, and so, Ash being Ash, he can't resist the challenge, and so they get into a battle, which of course leads to the remix theme song for this movie. However, as Ash ends up winning the battle, subsequently knocking out the trainer by accident, Brock's Golbat comes in and pretty much gets Ash basically, and yeah, I don't know. Okay, I don't really know how it gets Ash. All it does is come in, and I guess Ash recognizes it and manages to stir enough brain cells in his head to make him remember, oh shit, the ferry! And so he and Pikachu make a run for it. And they do almost reach the ferry, although they're blocked by a tram of cargo, so what can you do there? But Ash does manage to make it onto the ferry, by a slim margin. The ferry actually does go up before Ash can get on it, so he actually tries jumping off of the dock to get to it, and if it wasn't for another one of the passengers on the ferry, Ash would have had to take a dip in the river, so there you go. But regardless, Ash and Co. do ride along in the ferry, and they're minding their business, even talking to the customer that helped Ash get aboard. But as they're riding onto the view as they're going down the river, and in the nearby forest they see a Pokemon, specifically the legendary Pokemon Suicune, looking at them. Although for some reason they don't recognize Suicune. But then again, would you know who Suicune is off the top of your head? Either way, once the team reaches port, they end up calling Professor Oak and let him know about the Pokemon about Suicune, and he confirms it's a Suicune, and he mentions that Suicune is supposed to be the legendary North Wind and has the power to purify water. Which Ash and Co are like, really? Is that true? And Professor Oak says, oh yeah, it's true. I've seen it myself. But before you can further elaborate on that, Ash and Co get called away because you see, going back to that passenger that actually helped Ash before, well, he's offered to be kind of a ride, so to speak, to the nearby village, which in this case is a village that's located in the trees called Arborville. And how you get to it is that you fly. As it turns out, this passenger, who, if you're wondering why I'm not saying his name, it's because I don't think they give it at any point in this movie, so I'm just going to keep calling him the passenger. But regardless, this passenger has his own little boat which has flotation devices, and so they go down the river through the forest, and as they reach a waterfall, basically the boat basically transforms into a little airship and ends up flying up the waterfall until it eventually reaches Arborville, located in the trees above. And so he drops Ash and Co off, and they continue on their way. Also, Team Rocket's here. Yeah, I didn't really mention them because they were just falling behind Ash and Co. They had their own little pedalcopter thing that they were using to try and catch up to them. But, well, Jessie got a cramp in her leg, and as a result, the thing just came crashing down. So, sucks to be them, I guess. But again, going back, but either way, Ash and Co end up going through Arborville, and they end up reaching the edge of the forest, exactly where Sam was 40 years ago. And sure enough, they end up running into the same woman that Sam ran into. Now a much older lady, and now a lot less friendly, as she's aggressively telling Ash and Co, be careful when going into the forest, otherwise the voice of the forest will get you. Although her granddaughter Diana is a lot kinder, and does reiterate exactly what her grandmother is saying. Regardless, Ash and Co decide to go into the forest anyway, because why the hell not? Although Ash runs in guns blazing because it's Ash. But upon the trio entering the forest, that's when things start getting a little strange, as the trees in the forest begin glowing similarly to how they glowed back when Celebi used his time travel powers. And sure enough, we end up cutting over to that shrine that we saw earlier in the movie, now obviously much older since 40 years have passed. And well, who should appear in a glow of light but Sam and Celebi, with Celebi immediately leaving Sam's grasp once they arrive in the present, and Sam just lying there unconscious. As such, Ash and Co, obviously wanting to know what the hell's going on, end up rushing to where Sam is and find him unconscious, and so they try bringing him back to Diana and her grandmother's house. And once they arrive, Sam regains consciousness and almost freaks out because he thinks he's been caught by the hunter, but as he gets his bearings and looks around, he realizes, wait, this isn't where I was before, what's happening? As such, once Diana's grandmother appears, she recognizes Sam and pulls him in for a hug, because she's just happy he's okay, since from her perspective, he went into the forest 40 years ago and then never came back out, so that's kind of scary. But yeah, after Diana and her grandmother bring Ash, Co, and Sam up to their treehouse, they do confirm that this is probably the work of Celebi, since Celebi has the power of time travel. So if Sam is here in the present day, not looking any older than he did 40 years ago, then odds are that Celebi is the one that did it. And to further confirm the story, Diana's grandmother ends up giving back Sam's sketchbook, which she found after he disappeared, and she's been keeping it safe ever since. And it looks a little roughed up, since obviously it's been sitting around for 40 years, but it's still in good shape. However, once Sam realizes that he's in the present, he also realizes another thing. Where the hell's Celebi? As well, like I said, Celebi was injured after being chased by the Pokemon hunter, so he's probably still out there in the forest needing to nurse his wounds. So he wants to run back into the forest and help Celebi, and since, well, Ash and Co are good people, they volunteer to go with him and help him out. So, of course, the three of So of course, the four of them end up running back into the forest, and they do eventually manage to zero in on where Celebi is. As they see on a large there's a large log with a bunch of Pokemon just crowding around a little opening in it. And so Ash and Sam end up climbing up the log and reach the top, and sure enough, they see Celebi huddled in that little area. And while at first Celebi is a little tense because, well, obviously he's been injured, he doesn't really want visitors right now, and even he even ends up attacking Ash and Sam because, well, he's freaked out. Eventually, they do manage to get close enough to Celebi to convince him that they're not a threat, as they manage to even pick up Celebi, carry him, and Celebi soon realizes, oh, these people are friends. Although I think one part of the reason why Celebi lets up is because he recognizes Sam, and, well, Sam protected him before, so why not now? As such, Ash and Co. do end up having Celebi back in their possession, and so they realize that if Celebi's injured, he's gonna need some medical attention, and, well, Diana and her grandmother are back there, so why not go to them? But as they're doing this, well, that's when the Iron Mask Marauder arrives. As well, he's after Celebi, and thanks to the instructions of the hunter before, he arrives on the scene in a giant spider mech. And that's kind of awesome. And he basically demands that Ash and Co. hand Celebi over. Of course, Ash and Co. basically go, fuck that, to him, and they end up making a run for it. But before the Iron Mask Marauder can chase after, well, the path is blocked. His escape is blocked. Basically, he's intercepted by, well, Team Rocket, specifically Jesse, James, and Meowth. Yeah, after they crashed down earlier, they did end up seeing Ash and Co. as they were walking through the forest, and they decided to tail them. And then after Ash and Co. managed to get Celebi, they tried to ambush them and then failed. But which is when the Iron Mask Marauder appeared. And once the Iron Mask Marauder tried to come in and basically take Celebi, they thought that he was muscling in on their turf, and so James used his Pokemon Weezing to try and give our heroes a smoke screen so that the Marauder couldn't chase after them and thus give Team Rocket a chance to go after. Unfortunately, though, the Marauder has a psychotic Tyranitar who knows Hyper Beam, and the Hyper Beam breaks through the smoke cloud, and so the Marauder wants to know who the hell got in his way. As such, Jesse, James, and Meowth begin freaking out because they have no idea who this guy is, but once they get a good look at him, they recognize him because apparently he's a big deal in Team Rocket, and so they volunteer to help him out with this job, which the Marauder, I'm assuming, agrees to, because the next time we see them, they're riding around with the Marauder inside his mech, although they don't stay very long, because as the Marauder keeps traveling around, Jesse, James, and Meowth end up getting hungry, and as they're going to the forest, they pass by a peach tree, and, well, Team Rocket tries going out to grab the peach, and they end up falling out of the mech, and as a result, they have to basically chase after the Marauder just to keep up with him. They're just morons, aren't they? But anyway, after managing to escape from the Marauder, Ash and Co. basically wonder what the hell they're going to do, not helped by the fact that in their escape, Misty twisted her leg so she can't walk very well. Thankfully, though, that's when the forces of nature comes in, as it turns out the Pokemon of the forest seem to innately know that Celebi is in danger, and since Celebi is supposed to be the guardian of their forest, they want to help Celebi. And as such, the Pokemon of the forest begin leading Ash and Co. further in, with each set of forest Pokemon just kind of passing the baton to another as they continue going along, until eventually this line of Pokemon leads Ash and Co. to a lake. Specifically, a lake called the Lake of Life, which, according to Diana's grandmother, as she mentioned this earlier when Ash, Sam, and Co. were there, is supposed to be Celebi's home. So, naturally, that means that if that's where Celebi calls home, then maybe this is the ticket he needs to getting better, and, well, that's exactly what happens, as Ash and Sam end up taking Celebi out into the lake, dipping him in the water, and, well, apparently the lake's rejuvenating qualities come into play as Celebi manages to completely heal itself. Basically coming out of the water all happy and free and just all around excited, and it's admittedly some really cute stuff. And to further showcase that Celebi's powers have been restored, he actually goes up to Misty, who is resting her feet in the lake, and actually manages to heal her leg with just a touch. It's actually pretty nice. And from there, the next 10 or 20 minutes of this movie is just excess cuteness. I wish I was kidding. It's just excess cuteness. And I admit, I like cute shit, and I will not deny, Celebi is fucking adorable. In fact, I can give another compliment to this movie. I actually really like Celebi. I think that Celebi is a precious soul, and I want that Pokemon as a plush. I have a Mew plush in my closet over there. Give me a Celebi plush. I will happily display it in another video if I can. Point is, it is cute. As Ash and Sam swim in the lake alongside Celebi, they go flying. They eventually find a tree with some berries that Celebi likes. It's just some nice, sweet stuff. But we do at least get like one moment of character as when everyone's done playing and everyone's just resting for the night. Sam and Ash wake up, and Sam basically just has a moment where he wonders what he's going to do from here on out. Because, well, he's a kid at a time. He is from 40 years in the past. And unfortunately, he doesn't really have a lot going for him. Think of it like this. Imagine being ripped out of your own time. Just not knowing anything, and now you're suddenly 40 years in the future, and it is a coin toss whether anyone that you knew when you were back in your day is even still alive. Just kind of think about that, because Sam thinks about that. Because he's under the impression that he's potentially trapped here, and one of the first things he thinks about is what his mother is thinking. Is she even still around? Does she even still think about him? It's actually pretty it's actually some good stuff. It's some good stuff, admittedly, and does kind of come back to bite Sam in the ass later. I'll get to that. But Ash does manage to connect with Sam as he mentions how his own mother worries about him, and regardless of what life throws at them, Ash does think that they can get Sam back home, which I think is going to be pretty easy because again, they're currently just hanging out with the time traveling Pokemon. Odds are Celebi could give him a ride back, so I don't know. But regardless, that does seem to do the trick with Sam. So the next morning comes, and Ash and Co. plan to take Celebi back to Arborville so that Celebi can meet up with Diana and her grandmother. However, that's when they're intercepted by the Masked Marauder and the rest of Team Rocket, and basically once again, the Marauder wants Celebi. Of course, everyone fights back against the Marauder, but unfortunately he manages to get what he wants in the end, as his mech manages to sneak attack Celebi and grab it out of the air, and so the mech brings Celebi in close enough for the Marauder to grab one of his Dark Balls, and unfortunately, he manages to catch Celebi. As such, everyone's just fucking horrified and wants to go free Celebi, but, well, going back to how the forest seems to innately know whenever Celebi is in danger, well, the Pokemon of the forest immediately begin attacking the Marauder. Like, he gets swarmed by a whole flock of Pidgeys, and what does Ash do? He climbs up his mech and manages to make a grab for his Dark Ball and make a run for it, with the Marauder chasing after. Unfortunately, though, with the help of his mech, he manages to knock Ash down, and he manages to and after Ash is knocked to the ground, he manages to force Ash to let go of the Dark Ball, and so, once more, the Pokemon of the forest surround this guy, but, well, he's kind of already won at this point, as he pulls out the Dark Ball and lets Celebi out, and, well, as I mentioned, since the Dark Balls have the power to corrupt any Pokemon that were caught in them, well, Celebi ain't so kind anymore, and admittedly, I like how they visually do that. Like, throughout the entire movie, let me see if I can find this. Yeah, look, this is, like, if I can see it with the glare. Celebi throughout the movie has looked like this, with the cute little eyes and just being this gosh darn adorable sweetie pie. Once Celebi turns evil, the cuteness in the eye goes, and it's just these two little slits in the eyes that just look kind of terrifying. They look just so angry and cold and just vicious. It's actually nice. It's a nice little visual flair, and I dig it. But apparently the Dark Balls do make whatever Pokemon gets caught in them completely loyal to the Marauder, as he orders Celebi to just clear away the forest of all these Pokemon, and Celebi does it without a second thought. As such, from there, Marauder further orders Celebi to show what he's made of, as Celebi uses his innate connection to the forest to basically just rip and tear all the roots and trees that are nearby him and collect them into a giant floating mass of a nest in the sky, which also unfortunately contains Jessie, as she gets pulled away as well. And from there, the Marauder basically goes to join Celebi, and they just make their way out into the forest. Thankfully, though, that's when Ash and Co. manage to get themselves all back together, and they realize they gotta go after the Marauder and free Celebi, because clearly something's wrong with him. Now, in the meantime, as the Marauder continues making his way through the forest, Jessie, who the Marauder is fully aware is there, asks if maybe she can be let go, since, you know, they're both Team Rocket, but no, the Marauder has her here on purpose. You see, the thing is, why is the Marauder doing all this? Why did he go through all this effort just to get Celebi? Power! Yep. That is his end goal. He just wants power, and he believes that as long as a powerful Pokemon like Celebi is under his control, he can just do whatever the hell he wants. As such, he basically wants to demonstrate his power right here, right now, with Celebi under his command, and what he wants is for Jessie to report these findings back to Giovanni. Not because he wants to impress Giovanni, no, because after all, the Marauder's the one with a super powerful Pokemon. Why the hell should he listen to a guy like Giovanni anymore? He wants to run Team Rocket, and then eventually, the world! So, yeah, he basically just wants to take over the world. Okay, whatevs. Either way, that means he wants to keep demonstrating his power. And to further emphasize this, he orders Celebi to continue basically showing out more of his power, as Celebi actually manages to mold the big nest/cocoon that they were riding in into a giant tree monster. And again, I'll give credit. Actually looks pretty damn cool. It's entirely CGI, and I think it really works. It's otherworldly and feels off in comparison to all the hand-drawn backgrounds and animation. So I give credit. I like it. It's good shit. It's good shit. I dig it. However, as this is going on, Diana and her grandmother are sensing that something's up in the forest because they saw Celebi going nuts, although they didn't know it was Celebi at the time, and so they decide they might need to go out into the forest and see what the hell is happening. As such, I think either Ash and Co meet up with them while they're chasing after Celebi, or they manage to meet up with them on the way to Celebi. Point is, both Ash and Co and Diana and her grandmother do end up meeting up, and they do manage to find Celebi and the Marauder as they're making their way through the forest. As such, Ash and Co.'s first plan is to basically just try and get to Celebi and try and wake him up, but the Marauder doesn't really give a shit, as when they try kind of getting in his way and stopping him from going any further, the Marauder just continues ordering Celebi to get rid of these guys. And Celebi does, as Celebi unleashes a giant blast on the group, which sends Ash and Sam flying, but help arrives in the form of another legendary Pokemon. Well, yeah, Suicune comes back. As well, he sensed that something was going awry in the forest, and so he's here to offer his aid. As such, Ash and Sam tell Suicune that they need to get to Celebi and help him get back in control, but as such, Suicune does go in, and so, well, the Marauder thinks this is all a perfect opportunity for him, because, well, that's Suicune. That's another legendary Pokemon. If he can catch him in a Dark Ball, then he'll be even more powerful. So he ends up sending out another one of his Pokemon, which I think is Tyranitar again. Which, by the way, he has two other Pokemon that I forgot to mention. It's Scizor and his Sneevile again. And as a result, but basically to try and head him off, Brock ends up sending out his Onix, and Onix does manage to distract his Pokemon enough for Suicune to get away. Unfortunately, though, once Suicune gets up to the giant mass of vines and tendrils, that's when Celebi ends up striking again, as Celebi manages to grab Suicune out of the air, and the Marauder just orders Celebi to destroy Suicune as he just starts pumping him with energy. However, Ash and Sam are not caught in this energy as they manage to break free, and they manage to climb up to Celebi's, well, head, I guess. It's not really Celebi, it's the monster, but whatever. They manage to get close to the head, and they start yelling out to Celebi and pleading with him not to do any of this, saying he's the protector of the forest, not its destroyer, and what they're saying is starting to get through to Celebi as Celebi begins remembering all the good times they had, all the cute things they did together, and it does start causing a bit of an issue in Celebi's mind as the programming of the Dark Ball begins conflicting with his natural goodness. As such, while the Marauder keeps trying to exert his influence, ordering Celebi to continue doing what he's doing, well, Celebi is just kind of at war with himself. And so Ash and Sam do manage to get into the giant monster, and they continue pleading with Celebi to not do this, that he's not like this, and yada yada yada. And, well, it does seem to manage to get through, as they both end up reaching Celebi at the head of the monster, and they manage to basically force their way into his, well, mind, where the real Celebi is, and they manage to basically grab Celebi and hold him and basically tell him, it's okay, you don't have to do this, it's fine, you don't have to do this, remember who you are, and it actually does the job, as Celebi manages to wake up from his programming, and, well, it restores his natural goodness, which in turn actually causes a feedback on the Dark Ball as we see the Marauder as he's outside, and the Dark Ball that was Celebi's begins sparking and then explodes right in his hand. So I guess that's a side effect. Be careful with that, man. But the thing is, since Celebi is now good, well, this giant thing that Celebi's been piloting begins falling apart. And as everything has been going on, this thing has basically been going nuts, and this thing has continued so far in its journey that it's actually managed to reach the Lake of Life. And well, now that it's falling apart, it actually begins to fall apart right over the lake. As such, the Marauder is sent falling off, and Celebi does manage to get Ash and Sam out of there using its powers to lift them up and fly them out and send. Well, in the beginning, it does seem to be a win, as the giant root monster falls apart in the lake, and Celebi does bring Ash and Sam to the shore, where they meet up with everybody else. Unfortunately, though, just before they reach the shore completely, Celebi's power begins blinking out, and Celebi ends up passing out in Sam's arms. And so, as everyone gathers around to see what's going on, they see Celebi fucking wither up. And yeah, it's kind of fucked up. I'm not going to deny it. The visual of seeing Celebi begin to physically wither up is actually sort of haunting. And of course, the group immediately thinks that they need to get Celebi back into the Lake of Life, since that healed him up before. Maybe it can heal him up again. But it turns out that all the damage that Celebi caused while under the Marauder's control has had a negative impact on both the forest and the lake, as they both become tainted and are now unclean. Thankfully, though, that's what Suicune is here for, as Suicune manages to use his powers to completely heal the lake and restore it to normal. Unfortunately, though, that doesn't actually help in this matter, as while they try once again to dip Celebi back in the lake, well, unfortunately, he's too far gone. The lake's healing properties can't help him now. He's just dead. He's fucking dead. And I was inclined to call this a dark scene, especially when Sam hands Celebi over to Ash, and Ash, in an attempt to try and get Celebi to wake up, tries to get him to eat some of the berries they shared earlier, but it doesn't even react. It's just there in his arms. It's some pretty dark shit. Then the movie kind of ruins it a little by lingering a bit too long on everybody. Like, the camera pans over to everybody else, they're all crying and they look sad, and I get it, they would look sad, but then Sam goes, oh, Celebi didn't have a choice in this, Celebi never had a choice, and now he doesn't have a choice again because he's dead. It's like, I don't know. I feel like I have a heart of stone for not liking this scene, because for me, it feels like they're just kind of hammering it in. Yeah, I get it, it's sad, but it's starting to feel like you're pushing it a little. And in retrospect, it's a little heavy-handed, because guess what? Celebi doesn't stay dead. Yeah, just like with how Ash got his life saved in the first Pokemon movie through a Deus Ex Machina BS ass-pull, Celebi in turn gets one too, as suddenly the forest begins lighting up with energy similar to what happened when Celebi used his time travel powers. And sure enough, in the sky above the lake, a mystical portal opens, and from the portal comes Celebi. A whole lot of Celebi. Yeah, according to Diana's grandmother, these are the Celebis of the past and future, and they are here because they sense something was wrong and they want to help their counterpart in this time period. I guess it's like a Doctor Who thing. They don't remember any of this because it's cross timeline. I don't fucking know. But yeah, just like with Ash being revived in Mewtwo Strikes Back, this is kind of an ass pull, as all the Celebis grab our Celebi, bring him up to the portal, and they manage to inject enough of that sweet life juice into him, as it manages to completely heal and revive Celebi. As such, Celebi is now back to normal. He's all happy, he's all sweet, he's thankful to his other selves as they smile at him and fly back into their portal as they've done their job. And so Celebi is all happy and nice. Everyone is all sweet and is all great and cheerful that Celebi's okay, as Celebi flies out towards them and plans to just get into it and plans to, reunite with his friends, only for the Marauder to remind us that he's still in this movie as he jumps out of the water and just fucking grabs Celebi, because at this point, I guess he's just like fuck the pretense, I just need this Pokemon. As such, with Celebi in his arms, he decides that he'll just try again with his whole plan of getting ultimate power, and as instead of just throwing Celebi in another Dark Ball right there, he instead activates a jetpack and tries flying away. Thankfully, though, Ash and Pikachu managed to grab onto his leg and fly off with him, and Ash manages to get Pikachu right onto the jetpack, and he orders Pikachu to use a Thunderbolt, which in turn shorts out the jetpack. It causes Ash, Pikachu, and the Marauder to all come crashing down to Earth. Thankfully, Celebi is able to save Ash and Pikachu from becoming street pizza, but the Marauder isn't so lucky. Don't get me wrong, he doesn't die. His fall is ultimately cushioned as he lands on several tree branches, which do tear up his costume a bit, but he does survive. And when he lands, he sustains enough damage that his mask actually comes falling off. As such, the Marauder does then manage to get back onto his... Well, he sits back up, and, well, guess what? He's surrounded by a bunch of angry Pokemon who want to get some payback on him for trying to steal their Forest Guardian. And while at first he tries going to his vest to get some more of his Dark Ball Pokemon, he finds that apparently in his fall, he lost all his Dark Balls. So, yeah, he's kind of defenseless. And while he tries to say that this has been a misunderstanding, well, it's clear the Pokemon of the forest don't really give a shit, as immediately all the bug Pokemon begin wrapping him in silk. And while we don't see what ends up happening to him, I get the impression that he is about to get his ass whooped by several angry Pokemon. And considering how powerful Pokemon are, I don't think that's an ass whooping he'll be able to come back from for some time. So, there you go. Regardless, though, Celebi is fine. It's okay. The danger is past. The bad guy has been beaten. Everything's all hunky-dory, right? Well, there's still one thing that needs to be done, and that thing is sending Sam home. After all, like I said, he's a boy out of time. He needs to get back to his proper time, and Celebi is more than happy to help him along the way. As such, Sam bids his goodbyes to the group. It's supposed to be a heartfelt, tear-filled farewell, which I'll get to why I don't think it works and after I'm done with this plot summary. But Ash promises that he and Sam are still friends and that wherever they go, they'll still be friends, yada yada yada, blah blah blah. And so, Celebi takes Sam away, with Sam promising that Ash and Co. are good friends before Celebi and Sam vanish into the past. So, there you go. But after that, we then cut back to the ferry port as Ash and Co have managed to ring up Professor Oak again, and they basically been telling him all about the experience. Or more specifically, Misty and Brock have been telling Oak about the experience. Ash is still a little broken up about not seeing Sam again, and of course Professor Oak wants to know all about it. And so Ash tells Oak that, well, he met a nice trainer who he thought he was good friends with, but now he thinks he'll never see him again. But Professor Oak reassures Ash that some friendships last the test of time, and that if Ash and this trainer were really good friends, then they're still friends now. And he ultimately assures Ash that wherever Sammy went, he and Ash are still his and Ash's friendship are never going to stop, is never going to break. So some good stuff. As such, from there, immediately the group realizes they got to get back on the ferry, so they hang up with Professor Oak. But as they're making their way to the ferry, Misty realizes something. They never told Professor Oak Sam's name, so how did he know it? Well, they don't really have a lot of time to think about that, because again, they gotta get on the ferry, and Brock just assumes that Professor Oak knows everything, and I find that to be a stupid explanation. Brock, you're an idiot. But, yeah, the reason why Professor Oak knew Sam's name? Professor Oak is Sam. As we cut back to his lab in Pallet Town, and we see Professor Oak holding the same sketchbook that Sam had. And while the drawings in it are faded and smudged and all that, well, Professor Oak still remembers that journey fondly, and in his own words, it felt like it happened just yesterday. Which it kind of did. But, yeah, that's kind of where the movie ends. Well, sort of. There's still the matter of the Team Rocket members that we know, as we see that after the big plant colossus collapsed, Jessie did manage to get free, and she's now just floating along. Now she's just floating along the lake slash river. And sure enough, that's when she ends up running into James and Meowth, who go out to save her. And well, they know that the heat's still kind of on, as this forest is still full of Pokemon that are angry about Celebi. Plus, there's the fact that the Marauders' Pokemon are now set free. I'm going to assume that their Dark Balls were destroyed, so they're no longer evil anymore. So whatever. And as such, Team Rocket decides that they'll just spend some time floating along the river, and probably before they can get back to their adventures. So. Yeah, there you go. I mean, okay, we got some other credit stuff. Oh yeah, Suicune also left. Sorry, I'm just kind of missing some stuff. But, yeah. That was Pokémon Forever. I don't like this movie. Yeah, I said that already, but I'm restating it now. I don't like this movie. Why don't I like it, though? Well, let me put it this way. I can acknowledge that this film and the first two Pokemon movies are all stupid in their own regards. And going back to my vlogs for Mewtwo Strikes Back and The Power of One, I stated multiple reasons in both of those videos why I think those films were stupid. Mewtwo's motivation doesn't make sense. They dumbed him down too much. They took out more of the morally complex things. The whole fighting is wrong message they were trying to push for a franchise that's all about fighting. Then you get to The Power of One and the whole Chosen One bullshit. The whole Power of One and all that stuff, trying to emphasize this. The lame-ass villain in the form of Lawrence III. There was still plenty of dumb in both of those movies that held them back, and could easily put both of those movies in the bad film corner. And yet, I can still watch both of those movies over this one and have a better time. So then why do I like those movies and I don't like this one? Case in point, it's a matter of substance. When I watch the first two Pokemon movies, I can consciously know they're dumb, but I still feel like I'm getting something back from watching them. Going back to Mewtwo Strikes Back, that film still had a lot more weight to it that kept you engaged. While the writing for Mewtwo may have been kind of dumbed down and simplified because American executives were genuinely afraid that kids wouldn't be able to understand the complex themes with Mewtwo, at the very least, there was still something there. Even with the dumbed-down writing, Mewtwo was still an intimidating customer. He still carried a lot of power to him, and he still felt like someone you didn't want to screw with. And his whole plot of wanting to basically unleash his power on the world because he was trying to find a purpose and prove that clones are better, still felt like a much more engaging story, and definitely kept you interested in what was going on. Likewise, going with The Power of One, there was definitely a lot more going on there with the battle with the legendary birds as they all were trying to vie for each other's territory. How the world was going out of whack because of that underground stream bullshit that those birds were unknowingly helping to maintain. There was still something going on in the movie that kept you invested and wanted you to keep going. And while I keep griping on the whole Power of One thing with Ash, his whole journey to gather those mystical orbs in order to bring them back to that altar on that one island, at the very least still felt like it had more to it. There was more weight, there was more grandiosity, and that in turn felt like there was more substance to the movie. I don't get that with this movie. Celebi, the voice of the forest, feels like it's filler. And that's the biggest thing. This film feels like it should have more to it, but it doesn't. To give an example, first let's talk about Sam Oak, which, yeah, let's just call him Sam Oak. He's Professor Oak as a kid, so why not? Let's talk about Sam Oak. Let's pretend that we don't know that Sam is a younger version of Professor Oak, that he's a new character introduced for this movie, which he technically is. I don't give a shit about this kid. I'm not even kidding. Going back and rewatching this movie, I cannot think of a lot of scenes with Sam that really help endear him as a character to the audience. Okay, he protects Celebi. Well, that's nice of you. That's a nice kid. He likes to draw. Oh, that's a pretty interesting talent. What else is there about him? Nothing. We don't know anything about him. The only interesting thing about him is that he's a younger version of Professor Oak. Beyond that, he's just your basic, average kid hero that you can see in every anime. He's headstrong. He rushes into danger because he can. He puts himself in harm's way. He's basic. In fact, I can actually see why Professor Oak, why him and Ash are probably friends, because they have similar mindsets when seeing danger. Rush in, think about consequences later. But that's it. That's all his character. Okay, we have some moments with him bonding with Celebi, but it's less bonding per se. But it's less bonding in the sense of we're learning more about Sam, and more bonding because, oh, look at the cute little Celebi doing all these cute things. Let's do the cute things with him. And I'm gonna sound like a massive hypocrite here because a couple movies later, we're gonna have another Pokemon whose main gimmick is that it's so fucking cute, and I have a much more favorable opinion of that movie than this one. But the thing is, Sam should be a driving force in this movie. This is a kid who has been taken out of time, and yet not a lot of the movie is dedicated to that. We have one scene in the movie that I told you about. One scene where Sam begins thinking about it. It's the scene of the campfire, which when I really think about it, what led Sam and Ash to talking was the fact that Sam was staying up late and was drawing a picture of Pikachu and Celebi just sleeping together, and it was so fucking adorable. Good God, it was adorable. Seriously, they were just sleeping together, and Celebi was just resting his head on Pikachu's shoulder. I want a Celebi plush, damn it, it's adorable. But that's the only amount of character we get here, with Sam worrying about if he'll ever get home, if he'll ever see his loved ones again, if he'll ever see his mom again. That's some genuinely good drama, and the movie doesn't focus on that. It's just one scene, and that's it. We don't learn anything about Sam. And again, going back to how the fact he's a kid out of time, there's so much potential you could do with that. Having the future shock of Sam stepping into a world he doesn't understand and having to adapt to it. And hell, the fact that he's from the past is never brought up. He's like, the only real bit of conflict that comes from that is that it's what gets him involved in the plot. There's no clashing of mindsets or ideals or even of technology since Sam's from the past. There's only like one time that we see that. It's when Ash and Co were running with him the Masked Marauder and Team Rocket stopped him from chasing, which, I'm sorry I forgot about this in the plot summary, that's on me. But the Marauder sent out his Sneevil and his Scizor to get chased after them, and as a result, Ash and Sam brought out their Pokemon. We saw that Sam's Pokeball was basically a steampunk Pokeball, which admittedly is cool. In fact, what's up with these movies and having genuinely cool exclusive Pokeballs? I want them all. I want Mewtwo's Pokeballs. I want the Crystal Pokeballs from the last movie. I want the Dark Balls. I want whatever the hell Sam has. Give them to me. I will take them all and throw them on a shelf somewhere and just goggle them because I'm a nerd that likes to look at crazy shit. My point is, they all look cool, but the thing is, that's all we get out of him. That's the only unique thing we see from Sam from him being in the past. Beyond that, Sam being from the past is just there to help get him into this plot. And that's it. He doesn't really do anything new in the movie. In fact, a lot of the stuff he could do in this movie, Ash could have done solo. I don't really see a reason why Sam had to be included in this film. It's just a waste of space, and nothing is developed about him. The only really good thing he has going for him is that he's a younger version of Professor Oak, and even that apparently wasn't even a big factor in the original Japanese release. In fact, something that they actually added in the English version were hints and bits of foreshadowing towards Sam's true identity. Like going back to the scene where Ash and Co told Professor Oak that they saw Suicune. From what I can gather, and take what I'm saying with a grain of salt, I didn't confirm it before doing this vlog, that scene was added for the English version, and after Ash and Co hung up with Oak, we actually did cut back to Oak back in his lab, and he looks distraught because he says he thinks that he should have told him about something before they hung up. We don't know what it is, but after this whole adventure and the scene at the end, which again was added for the English version, it's implied that he was aware that Ash and Co are about to go on their journey and meet with Celebi and his younger self, and he wondered if he should have said anything about it or not. But that's it. Again, there's really nothing that special about it. And to go back to it, the cuteness factor. Now, I like cute things to a degree. Like I said, I don't like Hamtaro, but that's another thing altogether. I like cute shit. And as I said multiple times, Celebi is fucking adorable. I like seeing Celebi doing cute shit throughout this movie. I want a Celebi plush. If any of my friends are seeing this, remember that for Christmas or my birthday, because if I don't get a plush before then, you know what to get me. Unless you don't want to get it for me, if you don't want to get that for me, totally fine. I'm not going to tell you what to do. In fact, you don't have to give me anything if you don't want to. I'm just saying, if you want to give me a present, put that on the board. If you don't get it from me, that's another thing. I'm getting off topic, and this is stupid, and this is stupid. Point it, like, again, I like Celebi. He's cute. But all the moments in the movie where Celebi is acting all nice and sweet and adorable could have been used for character development. And going back to how Sam really has nothing to him, the friendship he has with Ash feels like nothing. There's nothing. Oh, don't get me wrong. I can see them working as a team. In fact, like I said, one of Sam's strengths is that he and Ash are very much just their regular dumbass protagonists who are naive but have good hearts. But again, as by virtue of that, they don't really mesh as friends. The only moment where the two of them actually bond, per se, is the scene I talked about before, where Ash and Sam talk about Sam possibly never getting home again. That's a good scene. I like that scene, and it actually has some good dialogue exchange between Ash and Sam, with Ash once relating to Sam when he talks about his mother. And even further emphasize this, as they're talking, apparently they walk into a bunch of trees where we see a bunch of metapods. They're all in the process of evolving into Butterfrees, and Ash uses that as an analogy to Sam being free to be able to go home at some point, which I like. That's good stuff. But that's the only bit of character bonding that we see between these two. And as a result, when Sam says his heartfelt farewell at the end of the movie, it doesn't feel earned. It feels tacked on. This is supposed to be this deep friendship, and it's supposed to be a loss that they're never going to see this kid again. And yet I don't give a shit about this kid at all. It's just like nothing. There's nothing there. It feels flat and hollow. And kind of going back to that scene, the Celebi revival is stupid. And it makes the death scene earlier feel very heavy-handed, because they linger on all the characters as they're all so sad and heartbroken that Celebi is dead. We see Celebi's withered form in Ash's arms. It's all so dark and mad and dead and heavy-handed, and then suddenly, whoosh, here comes the Celebis in the future, and it's stupid. It's stupid. It's just dumb. Even up to that point, I was just kind of going to the movie, but then after that point, I'm like, oh my god, this is so fucking dumb. And it is dumb. There's nothing much to it. It's just dumb. I feel like one of the best aspects of the movie, admittedly, was possibly the Masked Marauder, and that's only really because of his design, and I like the whole gimmick with him and the Dark Balls. The idea of him basically just being his motivation. Okay, actually, you know what? His flaws are mostly in his motivation, as he is basically just your average I want power and I want to rule the world kind of villain. But again, I feel like he has some saving graces for his design. I like the design of his helmet, and I like the whole thing with the Dark Balls. So there's that. So I wouldn't put him in the same camp as possibly Lawrence III, as he does actually have some kind of ambition. But he is also maybe a possibly dry villain. He does have some good things going for him, so I'm not going to write him up. So I'm not going to consider him a write-off. But at the same time, I feel like there are better villains. Again, I like him, but there are probably better villains. But that's all I can say. But if I can get to the aspects of the film I like, it's again I mentioned the cute aspects of the movie, which I think are fine. In fact, I'll give credit where it's due. While up until the ending, like I said, the film was just kind of to me. Nothing really bad, nothing really awful, but nothing really great either. And so there are middling moments in there, and the idea of a kid being pulled out of time and have to basically experience the future, I think is a good one. It wasn't implemented well, in my opinion, but I do think it was an interesting idea. And there is a later Pokemon movie that does the whole time travel aspect, and I think does it justice. So I will actually give that. So I'll give some kudos there as a good idea. And while I feel like they should have had Sam do more as a kid out of time, it was at least cool to see him with like the steampunk Pokeball. I wish we had more of that, but still, it's something, I guess. Celebi is, of course, just fucking adorable. And I'll give credit where it's due. When Celebi is captured by the Marauder and turned evil, It actually does feel like a WTF moment. Like I said, how Celebi go from this cute, bubbly character that loves flying around and playing at people to this almost cold, emotionless monster with little slits on her eyes. It actually is kind of terrifying, especially when Celebi takes what's left of the forest and then forms into this giant cocoon that morphs into a monster. That's actually some pretty dark shit. And it actually did make me go, okay, that's doing it for me. Which is helped by the fact that the CGI of the monster contrasts greatly with the hand-drawn designs of the world. And yes, I'll actually give another comment to the movie. It's because of the higher budget in the movie, the world does look pretty damn good. I love the design. I like how nice and green the forest looks and all that. So I'll give you that one. That is cool stuff. That is cool stuff. But when it really comes down to it for this movie, it's all skin, no meat. There is very little about this movie that I feel like really grabs you. It feels like there should be something greater there, and there's a modicum of a good idea there, especially with introducing Sam as the kid as he is, the twist with him being a younger Professor Oak, and the stuff with Celebi and the Marauder. Those things all feel like that on their own could work, and they could work. And honestly, if you do like the movie for like the cute stuff, I wouldn't blame you, because like I said, the stuff with Celebi is fucking adorable, and I will not deny seeing Celebi wither up in the third act is like a giant oh my god moment. Again, it's turned into a heavy-handed moment with the aftermath, and it goes into a oh you gotta be kidding me moment when the other Celebis come and revive ours. But whatever, I guess. I don't know. Happy endings and all that shit. So, I don't know, it feels like that this movie had the potential for better, and it didn't take advantage of it. It led to a film that I think is just mediocre in terms of quality, and only really falls into the realm of bad thanks to the ending thanks to the cop-out ending with the other Celebis. Beyond that, this film really just does not have a lot to it. It's just kind of a bland movie. Again, it has the trappings of a much better movie in place, and I do think that there's some things here and there that can catch your interest, but as an overall movie, I just don't think it works. As a Pokemon fan, it does not have a lot of substance to it to keep it interesting, and it doesn't feel like it has the proper weight that the first two movies had in order to do it. And as just a movie fan in general, I don't think it has enough to carry your attention either. Honestly, I think so far the only good movie that we've seen is, well, the Spell of the Unknown. That film had stakes. It had great character stuff, great designs and visuals for the world, a great moral that was implemented perfectly and was complex enough for kids to understand, or was complex enough that it had layers to it while still simple enough for kids to understand. It's just this one. Unfortunately, for Pokemon Forever / Celebi, the Voice of the Forest, it had the potential for greatness, and it just kind of fumbled with it. So, there you go. That's it. I don't like the movie. It's not awful, but there are certainly better Pokemon movies for you to watch. So, yeah, I think that's really all I have to say. If you managed to make it to the end of this video, I thank you for watching, and, well, next week we won't be doing any Pokemon videos. I'm going to be doing a one-week hiatus because, well, I'm going to do a vlog on the Fantastic Four, since that's part of the MCU, and, like I said, those vlogs are still technically ongoing. But when we do come back to the world of Pokemon, we'll actually be looking at a much better movie, and one that I actually was surprised that I liked, especially since, like this one, I didn't see it as a kid, and I didn't see any clips of it at all. As in a couple weeks, we'll be taking a look at Pokémon Heroes.